So to give you an overview of the book, Disciplinary Literacy in Primary Schools covers the aspects that are more pertinent for younger pupils as opposed to secondary pupils. For those of you not sure what disciplinary literacy is about, it's about reading, writing and thinking and speaking within the discipline. So for example, if you're reading in English, you might be thinking about making predictions, you might draw on your background knowledge, you might summarise, etc. But if you're reading in history, you might be thinking about similarity and difference, cause and consequence, and in science you might be looking at making observations or analysing data. So we read and write differently across the subjects. I really wanted to write this book because I wanted to unpick a gap, which was what could it look like in primary schools. So the term disciplinary literacy came about just over 20 years ago, and it was really about thinking and speaking within the discipline. Now, it's been taken on by various people since then, and before that, perhaps about 50 years ago, they talked about subject-specific talk and reading. So it's been around for quite a while, but the actual term was over 20 years ago. I'm really passionate about disciplinary literacy because I've seen the power, the transformational power that reading and writing can have for pupils. Being educated can really change people's lives, and that's why I've chosen to write the book. I think there are top 5 benefits to reading and thinking like scientists, historians and geographers, etc. The first one is building rich background knowledge, the children having that knowledge to think and speak and debate within the discipline. The second one is that they're able to think critically. So if you're presented with a question in history or geography or a mathematical problem-solving question, then children can really think, do you agree with the answer? Do you disagree? How would you improve that answer? So it enables them to think critically. Another one I feel is that it develops children's communication skills. So they're working with pupils, really thinking and actually speaking like a scientist or like a historian. It's so important for children to really get deep into a subject. Another aspect is really thinking about the subject-specific vocabulary. So, for example, evaporation and condensation is very specific to science. Takeaway could mean something different. Takeaway could be a takeaway on a Friday night, or it could be takeaway in mathematics. So subject-specific vocabulary is also a benefit for children and helps them to improve their reading. And finally, there's engagement and motivation. Really important. Children are really enthusiastic about reading, writing and speaking like scientists and historians. And also about taking part in drama activities, play and modelling. So really important for children. Metacognition is incredibly important when it comes to disciplinary literacy. So for those of you not familiar about what metacognition is, it's about pupils and teachers planning, doing and reviewing a particular activity. It's about articulating your thought process and thinking deeply about a particular subject. And disciplinary literacy is a metacognitive approach. So for example, if you're writing and you're doing the discipline of writing, you might be modelling your thought process. I'm going to start with a capital letter, I'm going to end with a full stop. If you're modelling and articulating your thought process in history, you might say, I'm going to be thinking about the similarity and difference between the Mary Seacole and Florence Nightingale. So it's about articulating your thought process, thinking deeply about the subject, and we know from looking at the EEF research that pupils can make up to 8 months progress using a metacognitive process, so it's incredibly powerful. I don't want children to feel like they don't belong within the curriculum, so that they're able to express themselves in the way that they need to. Of course, we need to teach pupils standard English, that's important, it's in the national curriculum. But In terms of disciplinary literacy and thinking about that across the subjects, we need to utilise strategies such as assistive technology to support children. So having a text read to them that might support them in terms of disciplinary literacy. Using metacognitive strategies like explicit instruction or I do, we do, you do to show how you become an historian or scientist, really important. Flexible grouping, working with different pupils so you can hear voices from different voices across the class is really, really important. And scaffolding, well, throughout the book I use lots of sentence stems to support pupils to be speaking and talking within the discipline. So I'm passionate about it being equitable and so that pupils feel like they belong within the curriculum. Within the book, I explore oracy, so I have a look at the different areas and research in terms of oracy, so thinking about children's presentational skills, thinking about how they work collaboratively with others, thinking about oracy as a social justice aspect, that children feel like they have a voice. And that fits in beautifully with disciplinary literacy because children do need to be able to speak, to think deeply about a subject, to have a question, to really discuss that question, to debate a question so that they feel like they're able to access the curriculum. So disciplinary literacy is a key aspect and part of oracy, and it's not separate to it. The first thing I would say to teachers and leaders is that it's not additional workload. Disciplinary literacy is not about adding to workload, it's about tweaking what you already have. So rather than just looking at facts, you might be thinking about those facts, have a discussion about them, debate about the facts that you're learning in science, for example. So disciplinary literacy is about enhancing the curriculum, tweaking the curriculum and making it far more purposeful. So for teachers, that could be really explicitly teaching vocabulary, reading aloud to children, reading texts that fit in with science, history, geography that make it more exciting for children. Disciplinary literacy could be about writing, so writing like a scientist or historian, but very, very clearly linked to your curriculum, not an additional or add-on aspect. Disciplinary literacy could also be as simple as having sentence stems and talking within the discipline. So it's not meant to be additional work for teachers, but to enhance what they're already doing. I think just having an absolute love of reading and having reading across the curriculum that really enables children to understand concepts. So reading books like Coming to England by Floella Benjamin will give them that concept of monarchy, a rich reading environment. I'm hoping that they take away some aspects from the case studies. I've got case studies from across the country, one formentary schools, multi-academy trusts, and hopefully they've got some practical ideas in terms of implementation. I'm hoping that they really, really think about how they can make explicit the process of being a scientist, historian, or geographer. So there's something for everyone within the book.